Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 4:34. I'd like to call this meeting to order. As a reminder, please note that the board meetings are being recorded for the convenience of those unable to attend this video conference. A recording and closed captioning will be posted to the BERS YouTube channel following the meeting. Alex, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Adriana Valencia. Marielle Ali. Karina Pollan.
Present.
Thank you. Phoebe Shade Arnold.
Present.
Thank you. Shirley Aubin.
Present.
Thank you. Marjorie Dienstag.
Present.
Thank you. Chair. Gregory Faulkner. Thank you. Anita Garcia. Anthony Giordano.
Present.
Thank you. Angela Green.
Here.
Thank you. Naveed Hassan.
Present.
Thank you. Allison Hirsch.
John Lewis, the designate for control island.
Thank you. Alice Hall.
Present. Oh.
Thank you. Rima Izquierdo. Jessamine Lee.
Present.
Thank you. John Maderick.
Thanks, Sir Ballot and for John Matter.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
Present.
Thank you. Sharon Odwin.
Present.
Thank you. Alan Ong. Mahisha Sapp.
Present.
Thank you. Thomas Shepard. Venus Asang.
Thank you.
And Manny Tavares. Thank you.
Alex, do we have a quorum? Thank you, Alex. First, business to conduct tonight, note in the minutes of the meeting of the board held on June 27th. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Tony, second by Karina Pollan. All in favor of approving the minutes for June 27th, please respond in favor.
In favor.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on today's agenda is an update from the Executive Director, Sandy Rich. Sandy?
Thank you, Donald. I apologize if I'm droning on, but I'm giving you edited 3 months of comments. BERS received the Government Finance Officers Association Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the fiscal 2023 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It is our 38th such consecutive award. BERS was also identified as the 4th best funded municipal pension fund by the Equitable Institute. BERS actually funded percentage is 98.8% in fiscal year end 2023. Thank you, Mayor. The range of funding across Equitable published municipal plans varied from 113% to 21%. The 3 funds that are better funded than BERS are Detroit Municipal Employer Plan 1, Detroit Police and Fire Plan 1, and Houston Firefighters. For those who aren't familiar with it, Detroit went bankrupt a number of years ago, reestablished their pension systems. They're very small plans. So I'm taking the liberal speakers. We're actually number 2.
Right.
We're actually as adjusted. I mean, and for the record, fiscal 2024 ended June 30th. Sorry, I'm just getting to this now for you folks. Investment performance 10.55%, which translates approximately into 11.25% for the QPP because of the leverage factor behind the structure of our system. For comparison, CalPERS, the largest public pension fund in the country, reported a 9.3% annual return at June 2024. We compare quite well. We're doing a great job. Thank you very much, everyone. I want to thank Catherine Diaz, Allison Taylor-Seven, and the entire MCU team for their efforts to get the word out to members and unenrolled about the importance of the defined benefit program at BERS and the availability of the TDA defined contribution plan. This is something we're coordinating with the DOE, with the unions about auto enrollment. Remind you that October 1st is the day that if you don't opt out, you get enrolled. Auto enrollment progress continues. 90, 60, and 30-day notices have gone out from both BERS and the DOE. DHR has notice of changes and prepared to respond to inquiries. SCA and crossing guards are handling their own outreach. CPMS auto enrollment updates have all been rolled out, and updating processing project workflows and forms. This has actually put off some improvements to our 403B system. We've put off Roth conversion to next year. We've put off some auditing identified corrections to our systems as a result, but we had to prioritize auto enrollment within our budget allocation. And that was the result. Preliminary data for opt-outs, currently about 318, very few. We expect between 25 and 28,000 new members to be auto-enrolled into BERS October 1st. It's going to be the first time you're going to hear it from me. You're going to hear it again. We're going to need to add staff. Daniel Miller will be making a presentation tonight for our fiscal 2025 budget proposal. This material has been shared several times digitally and physically at previous board meetings. We are seeking trustee approval of this budget tonight. While our budget is not increasing significantly this fiscal year, you should expect increases both in fiscal year and potentially with an interim request for staff before the end of 2024. With the implementation of auto enrollment for BERS, it is possible that we will see a 70% or more increase in BERS membership and the resulting increase in demand for counseling, increased demands in our call center and member communications unit, and increases in transactions activity across operations, quality assurance, fiscal, and audit activity. This will translate into future requests for headcount to handle these demands. I tasked our key operational departments to look out 3 to 5 years and estimate staffing needs and to plan on making staffing requests 12 months ahead of any increase requirement to facilitate training. Yes.
On privilege, we have a bunch of new people at the board. Maybe you could just briefly explain what happened with the auto enrollment change.
Certainly. The New York City Board of Education system is one of 5 systems in New York City. You have fire, police, NYCBERS, teachers, and BERS. BERS represents the non-pedagogue employees of the DOE. Of those 5 systems, the other 4 systems, not BERS, are auto enrollment. You sign on to be a cop, a fireman, an employer who's covered by NYCBERS, or a teacher, you are automatically enrolled in the pension system. BERS is opt-in. At the presentation of your initial employment, you should be offered the opportunity to enroll in BERS. It is not clear to me that I met with someone this morning who said they never heard of this in 2016 when they joined. So it's not clear that everyone knows about us. But working with the unions, thank you, Donald, who led this effort for 732 and the other unions in the city.
372.
But they, because we can't campaign, they campaigned in Albany to get auto enrollment legislation. It took 4 years, 1 year to roll up, 2 failed years, a year in the middle, and then finally the approval. The bill was signed in Albany December last year. And what that does is automatically enroll any new employee and previous unenrolled. Yes, John?
Yeah, just one point of clarification. NYCBERS is not auto enrollment for every title. There are over 60 plans. Certain plans, as a NYCBERS trustee, I can tell you certain plans require people to affirmatively opt in, but many of the plans are auto enrollment. I just want to make sure the record's.
Yeah, I made a generalization because we do have some that are auto enrolled who are members of BERS too. So yeah, there's a mixture. I overgeneralized. Thank you, Mr. Dorsa.
Yeah, I think the distinction is simply
And the
that BERS
doctors,
is a
members of
very
BERS.
large proportion of potentially covered employees who are outside of the competitive civil service class, and therefore were opt-in under the old law and will be opt-out under the new law.
And the last point is we have approximately 32,000 current members. The estimated of the unenrolled that are likely to be enrolled because they do not opt out, I would say, is between 25 and 28,000. So we could see a 70% increase in members. The way that'll impact us, it's already impacting our call center. We have an outreach program to make people educated. But this will pressure our counseling office at 65 Court Street as people start seeing deductions from their compensation. If they haven't paid attention to the 3 letters we've sent out, the posters, the notifications from unions, notifications from DHR, we're trying to flood the system with information. We fully expect to have a wave of people coming to us for the next 3 or 4 months, asking questions and learning more about what we offer. including things like getting their beneficiaries, offering contributions to the 403B sidecar, investment opportunities. There's gonna be a lot of communication with a lot of new members over the next 3 to 15 months. 12 months after the auto enroll date, October 1st, new members will then have the ability to borrow against any contributions that are being made and buy prior service. There will be a lot of people buying prior service. This is going to drive our operations transactions, and we're going to see a jump in those. I would say 40 to 50% of those transactions. It'll scale up slowly because not everyone will be prepared to borrow or want to purchase SCP. But we are going to have a lot of pressure on our operations. Yes, Greg.
So what are we enrolling? Have we seen any significant dropout rate
318 so far.
of that number? Okay.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
Very few. I think people are, the letters we are sending describe the benefits they're getting. And I think it's turning the tide on any potential opt-outs.
Yeah.
An update, we've engaged real estate broker for the search of new office space. Our 55 Water lease is up in mid-2026. Engaged the Switzer Group, an MWB owned design firm to assist us with architectural analysis and consulting. We have a good deal of work to do before we must worry and finalize a new lease, but I'd like to update you on some expectations. We expect secure long-term lease and we'll be planning on an increase in space and costs as we prepare for auto enrollment. Our current lease obligation is approximately $2.2 million per year. We could see that increase 50% based on markets, according to the consultant we hired.
Invite you to the Bronx.
What we found was that Brooklyn is the most expensive, Midtown's second, downtown's lowest. That's why we're here. That's why we're here.
Lower than the-
This was relatively inexpensive.
You got an exceptionally good deal.
Yeah, we got a really good deal there.
Current lease right now.
For people who don't know, we got this deal from a nearly bankrupt hedge fund who basically left all the furniture and everything but the server technology, all the refrigerators, everything you see, all the technology you see, they just left.
But now we own it?
It's ours. Yeah, it's ours.
Your building is owned by a pension fund, right?
Retirement System of Alabama, brilliant men, people, sorry.
Yeah.
I only know Dr. Bonner. Opportunities for trustee education, fiduciary investors symposium is September 18th to 20th. I actually consider this one of the best educational programs in the country. It's at Stanford University. The National Conference of Teachers Retirement has a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, October 5th through 8th. We generally don't attend that, although we are members of NCTR. NYCBERS has a public safety conference October 27th to 30th in Palm Springs, California. And in New York, the National Association of Securities Professionals New York chapter has their annual symposium. This is November 20th to 21st. The 20th is an evening event where they have a speaker, and the 21st is an all-day event in New York City. It's up northern Midtown. And Karen Wong can assist with any arrangements you need to attend any of these conferences. One of the things that we provide trustees for new trustees is educational opportunities. As a matter of fact, if you find an educational opportunity you think is attractive, please let us know. We'll help you set it up. Mr. Dorset.
Yeah, I just want to remind folks, if you haven't seen it, you'll see an email. The Bureau of Asset Management is doing BAM University again, September 27th and September 30th, to just talk about investments more parochially contained to the 5 pension funds.
How
So
come I'm not-
trustees should be, trustees only, Sandy, so
Okay.
trustees should be getting an email or have seen one. So just be on the lookout for it.
Make sure that John has all the recent new additions to our trustee.
You do.
Okay.
Thank you. That's why I mentioned
Yeah.
that, just in case there are new folks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And then finally, New York City Board of Education Retirement System is losing a key member of the leadership team. Our general counsel, Alex Kazazis.
What?
Alex is leaving to pursue an entrepreneurial interest in gaming and software development.
Absolutely.
Alex was one of the first individuals I met and trusted at BERS. He had impact across the agency, helping to drive the velocity administrative systems implementations, managing the governance of our agency, managing numerous legal activities of the agency, supporting our member elected trustees and securing the auto enrollment protections for the nearly 30,000 unenrolled employees of DOE. qualified to be BERS members and implementing new Secure 2.0 provisions, including Roth option for the TDA 403B sidecar investment option that will be a benefit to members through their retirement. I would list more, but we have work to do. In honor of Alex's impact on the agency and the leadership of BERS, I have created a new annual recognition, that of perfectly esteemed. This will be an annual recognition of individual members of the BERS leadership team, nominated by the team and awarded by the executive directors. Alex Gazazis is the first to receive this recognition and sets a lofty standard for future winners. Perfectly esteemed refers to a series of quotes from John Paul Jones that speaks to the leadership qualities required of a naval officer. This award parallels an annual leadership award given to Merrill Lynch senior executives by the Office of the CEO. I was a former Merrill Lynch investment banker. I'd like to read the award text for you.
Nothing about going down with the ship.
Qualifications of a naval officer. It is by no means enough that an officer of the Navy should be a capable mariner. He must be that, of course, but also a great deal more. He should be as well a gentleman of liberal education, refined manners, punctilious courtesy, and the nicest sense of personal honor. He should be the soul of tact, patience, justice, firmness, kindness, and charity. No meritorious act of a subordinate should escape his attention or be left to pass without its reward, even if that reward is only a word of approval. Conversely, he should not be blind to a single fault in any subordinate. Though at the same time, he should be quick and unfailing to distinguish error from malice, thoughtfulness from incompetency, and well-meant shortcomings from heedless or stupid blunder. In one word, every commander should seek to be constantly before him the great truth that to be well obeyed, he must be perfectly esteemed. Alex.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Thank you for your support to me personally, your support to the leadership team and staff, and all you've done for our members.
Wow.
Thank you.
I'll just say, like, just a moment. Some of you maybe don't know me very long, but I've been here for almost 15 years now. This really has been a home for me. It's been a family for me. You know, we've been through a lot here. It's been really an honor and a pleasure. It's not at all easy, you know, to walk away, but you know, there are just some things that I want to pursue that I have to get to while I have the energy, the drive, and I don't want to look back with regrets. This has been really a great adventure, and like I said, a tremendous honor. I never knew when I started here as a temp that I would end up, you know, sticking around this long, being general counsel myself. But there was always, you know, more to do, and so it never seemed like the right time to leave because there was always, you know, more to be done. But you know, I think the time has come, and so I'd like to wish goodbye and good luck to all of you. And welcome to those of you who have just arrived on the board. You know, I think this is really a very special place. This is a very, very special place. I mean it in a good way, right? There's a tremendous sense of mission among the staff. There's a relationship between the membership and the organization that I've never seen before in a government office. And I don't want to say anything about other government offices, but we've all been at some office where, you know, people, you know, make us wait forever and they're not very good to us. And BERS just has a very different culture. You know, especially starting with Maria and her team and Sally and her team, but really everybody here is extremely mission-centric. We really have a meaningful relationship, I think, with the membership, and this makes this place stand out. And that kept me here much longer than I had ever planned. So thank you. Even though you know, back in Greece, I was an army officer, not a naval officer.
Well, that's
But,
tough. That's tough. Merrill Lynch executives were Marines and naval officers, so that's the way they went.
Anyway, you really surprised me here, Sandy, but thank you so much. Thanks for everything. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question, Sandy.
Yes.
Speaking of membership, just briefly, did you say that the crossing guards are responsible for their own outreach?
Yes.
Are we tracking that? Are they good at it? Like, what do you, how?
Well,
I think, Sandy,
so
the
we are,
NYCB.
Not frustrated, they are responsible, the police are responsible for the crossing guards. And the crossing guards, they manage that relationship. So, yeah, we're supporting them with everything they need.
Yeah,
And-
if I may, there are different privacy standards that they follow at One Police Plaza. Basically, they don't want to share data with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounded a
They
little.
have their own, because they have their own procedures and, you know,
Yeah.
we work with their procedures.
So what is CSA?
And-
Did you say that before?
SCA.
SCA.
School construction.
Okay, so it's that level of transparency that becomes problemsome. Because
Yeah.
these are folks that are in our community, these are us, right? And again, just representing the board and so on and so forth. So I hope that it's understood that it's not about them separating. I don't know how we need to find out like the effectiveness of that, because we talk about the most vulnerable and the least paid workers. We're talking about something very specific now. And I'm hoping that we can follow up, at least track how effective that is. Has that been done in the past? Right? So,
I think we'll be able to track it through the counseling center. We'll see waves of inquiry. Yeah.
No, I was gonna chime in as the vice president that represents the crew crossing guards and some of the members. The NYPD does a great job in conveying benefits from day one to them in the academy. They don't have some of the other issues that we see with auto enrollment. It's a lot of them sign up from the very beginning because in the academy, all of these things are like they run down each benefit to them. But there is a certain level, even when we're doing negotiation, it's separate and apart with the police department, and they run the organization like a paramilitary organization is supposed to be run. And it's just, things are just strictly done there different, but as for, in terms of benefits, like the pension benefits, auto enrollment, we don't get it. When I go to precinct meetings, I don't get a lot of school crossing guards that are not in, compared to lunchroom employees, school aides and others. So
Yeah, they're very disciplined.
yeah, that issue, I don't want to say it's non-existent because it exists there as well. But it's just, they don't have all of those issues there.
okay.
In the 319 people who have opted out, have we seen crossing guards disproportionately represented?
I don't have data on that. I can find out for you.
That was gonna be my next question. How, like, again, in marketing, you tap somebody 7 times. So to get 3 letters, I'm like, you have 4 more times to either find out, like, if, because again, I mean, again, you can track the patterns of why people disengage. We use that word a lot in the Board of Education, but, we need to recognize it even with employees. Why are they disengaging? Or, let's find out the decisions. It may just be a survey or just asking, but that's a pretty decent number, 318 people, without just the basic, we tried 7 times and maybe it may go down to 300. but-
Yeah, actually, so in ERISA plans, generally speaking, for auto enrollment opt-outs, generally between 4% and 5%. I mean, they're very low. So actually, the fact that we have 318 of almost 30,000, it's like no one's opting out. It's like,
Right.
yeah. And what I'll do is I'll talk to Sally Rivera. I will find out how many times because we're reaching out, DOE is reaching out, DHR is reaching out, unions are reaching out. I mean, we're trying to surround this population of people with as many people talking to them and sending them information as possible. So
Right.
I will ask Sally to do an analysis of how often the average person is reached out to. That's a good question. And we won't be able to, it'll be too late to talk about that. at the
Andy,
next
it's been
board
6
meeting,
times.
But I'll get the answer for the trustees
Andy, it's
about
been
that.
6
I
times.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
My last question is because, again, there are patterns, right? super interested in who is taking out against their retirement, why? Is there certain monies that need to be available because these are like really,
Yep.
they're not making a lot. And so what situation is creating or the causes of someone not opting? We have to find those type of answers out.
Yeah, we generally don't ask the question of why people are borrowing against their balances. But we do see a significant number of loan transactions.
Also lowest earning.
Mhm.
And lowest
Yeah.
earnings, so
Yeah.
the need for that cash is gonna
Yeah.
be greater.
Yeah,
Right.
And it's better to invest in your retirement because you're paying back yourself.
Right.
So if you're
They're
gonna
in a
take a
high
loan,
interest
so
loan.
usually they buy a new home or college for students or a new car. That's usually
Yeah.
when they borrow from their retirement. That's
Yeah.
most of the reason why.
And we will launch an effort to educate them on the 403B sidecar investment opportunity also, because it's extraordinarily attractive because we can guarantee a return.
Can we follow up, like, just let us know when that's coming up, or how
Yeah,
is
that'll-
the board gonna be working?
There's a whole bunch of things we're gonna be seeking from these people, beneficiaries, opportunities for 403B investment. The marketing effort will continue for the next year or two.
yeah, if I may also add, Alice's comments was spot on. I've never seen an organization where the culture across everyone that works here, they all have a heart for the members that they serve. They have an understanding. Just to take a walk around here, and I encourage folks who are trustees to do that and talk with some of the folks who work here. I always say, had it not been for me going to a union meeting and meeting someone from BERS who encouraged me to join the pension, and encouraged me in a whole lot of other places, I may not be sitting in the space where I'm at. I always say that. I met Daniel, I met Michael Medina, who used to work here. I met Sally back then. And those relationships, I see the same interest that they took in me, and we invite them to membership meetings. I see that same heart, that same attention, that same one-on-one interaction with members when they have additional questions after the meeting. So it's not just about the presentation. They take time afterwards. I've sat where they've spoken to members separately, one-on-one, hours after the meeting was over, right? That attention, I never seen anything like that anywhere else.
John?
So I recognize we're already after 5 but I think you raised a really good point. Would it be possible, and I don't believe that this requires a quorum, but to have a pension seminar for the trustees? I mean, there's enough of us to fill a room, right? That we would get the access to a trainer the same way that a member would, because that may help. I know it would help me understand the benefit structure at BERS.
Sure.
As opposed to the benefit structure that exists in other places that I'm familiar with. So I don't know if it's something we could do. And again, I'm not asking one of the members to stay after, one of the team to stay after hours, but if we could do it at 4 o'clock and start this meeting at 4:30.
We have a complete onboarding process that most people have experienced. I'm gonna send you the information. I'll resend it to all the trustees. It involves video, PowerPoint, a number of memos, access to a digital book on how to be a trustee. Happy to share that with everyone. We share it with onboarding of new trustees right now, but it's a good idea. We'll share it around and we can have a presentation.
The mailing from BAM, is that going to our school address or is that going to our general?
I'd have, I'm
'Cause I don't have it, I don't see it.
truth be told, I'm not the one sending it, so I'll find out,
I know
where it went.
Yeah, I
when
know
get back.
sometimes they limit to mail only to our school address, and a lot of us have a difficulty getting into that.
So I'll,
Totally locked
yeah,
up.
I'll check that when I'll check that when I get back to the office.
I don't have it. Peter, going to-
So the time is now 5:03.
Yeah, let's move it.
Thank you, Sandy, for your
Thank you.
remarks. Thank you for your report.
Thank you, Alex, for your service.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
The next items on the agenda today is calendar items 2 through 17, the ordinary business of BERS. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
So move Karina
Second.
Collins, second, Tony Giordano. Alex, please tell us about the ordinary business of BERS.
Of course, these are all the retirements, death benefits, and refunds that have been processed since the last meeting of this board. This is, through July 2024.
Thank you, Alex. We'll now have a vote on these items. All in favor of approving calendar items 2 through 17, please indicate by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is calendar item 18, adoption of the actuary's recommendation regarding the tax deferred annuity loan insurance premium rate for loans originating on or before October 1st, 2024. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Motion made by Tony. Second.
Second.
Merrick's.
Oh, Donald, one second, we're trying to troubleshoot the audio. Can someone and that who's attending virtually, can they just say something?
Yeah, testing, Karen.
Great, thank you, Ade. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, so everything's good. Sorry about that, Donald.
Shirley, second. Tony made the motion. Shirley, second. Merrick, can you tell us about this agenda item?
This is for insurance for outstanding loans on member TDA contributions in case of death for the 5-year period starting this upcoming October 1st. This premium is currently 0.4%. It's been 0.4% since 1995. We calculated a theoretical premium using the current BERS mortality table, and our analysis showed that rate that's maybe 1/10 to 2/10 higher could be, there's a theoretical rate that could be higher, but when we looked at the actual claims history, the current 0.4% premium has actually been sufficient to cover the claims, and it's still reasonable. So my recommendation, which is reflected in the memo and the proposed resolution, is to keep the premium at 0.4% for the next 5 years and then re-examine it again. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from Eric? Any questions? Seeing no hands. Thank you, Merrick. We will now vote on this item. All in favor of approving calendar item 18, please indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next agenda item is calendar item number 19, New York City BERS fiscal year 2025 budget. May we have a motion to discuss?
Motion.
Motion made by Shirley, second. Second by Mahisha.
Yes.
Gotcha. Daniel Miller, Deputy Executive Director will discuss this agenda item. Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. Karen, can you put up presentation, please?
Oh, actually didn't upload it here on the computer with the switch, during the audit committee meeting. If you just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Sorry, I'm there.
Could you make it full screen?
Once in a while. Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, this budget we presented to the board in April preliminarily. It's $35.87 million. 24.7 of that is PS and 11.1 is OTPS. Next slide, Karen. This shows you the budget trend over the last 3 fiscal years from FY22 to present. In April, we presented a budget of $36.7 million. It's gone up by $85,000 because we wanted to add internal audit software. As you can see by the last line of the total outflow, our budget has decreased 5% from last year. And with that, we want to add 3 headcount. And this 3 headcount, if you recall back in April, is for 3 longtime temps of BERS that have been here for over 5 years that we'd like to onboard to staff. Next slide is some of the drivers of the budget this year. So the drivers, $1.04 million was the union contract increases at the the mayor and the unions negotiated. So BERS had to implement that to our budget. $875,000 for the velocity upgrade that the board approved in April. $820K is for auto enrollment, $100K for DOB medical doctors for disabilities, and the $85K increase I spoke about earlier is right here for quality assurance and internal audit. The reduction of the budget includes $625,000 for VITEC maintenance support hours. There was a fringe rate reduction of 4.76% that equals $580K, and $85K reduction in overtime costs. I've restricted the budget for the last several months. Are there any questions of the board?
Any questions?
Daniel, maybe for the benefit of new members, you could just go over kind of corpus funding and where our budget comes from. I think that might be beneficial for some folks.
Sure. So BERS is funded by the corpus. That was a law passed about 30 years ago, around there. That basically said we are funded through our investments. So that comes from the city contributes money on behalf of the members, the members that make contributions, and that money is invested, and those returns drive our, corpus, basically. So the budget comes from that funding. It's not directly from the city's budget. It's a separate item.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a quick question about this budget. I think I know the answer, but I just want to be public. This budget does not include the incremental staff that you talked about for auto enrollment. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct. There's a couple reasons for that. We still have about 8 open headcount right now that we're looking to hire. And as Sandy said, the auto enrollment increases in transactions will gradually increase. It won't be all in the beginning of auto enrollment.
So what you stated, thank you, Daniel. What you stated, Sandy, was that your goal is to have 12 months notice of the increased staffing. So my question for you, does that 8 headcount, the 8 vacancies, will that cover what is required for this fiscal year?
I don't think so, no.
That 8 vacancies from the last fiscal year budget. We've had some departures recently, member communications, that opened up some headcount. So that was from the last fiscal year. If you recall, and for new trustees, per CEM benchmarking that compares BERS to other similarly sized pension funds across the country, BERS staff do 40% more transactions than similarly sized pension funds. And that does not include the 403B TDA, because not all funds of our size have that. So BERS staff is already doing more work than similarly sized funds. And as Sandy mentioned, we could see an increase of the same kind of our membership going forward.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to understand what the variance would be bridged.
What we will be kind of managing dynamically is the problem of it's tough to hire. We need to hire before we need to have someone on staff to train them before they can be impactful. And, we're thinking out 2 or 3 years, right? It'll be a year before the transaction volume really starts to generate. So we will want to begin hiring probably in 2025 to begin that ramp up. And if we asked for 30 or 40 headcount, it would probably take us 2 years to add those.
Right.
So
And
we will ask for it.
Just to add to that, last year we added headcount to member communications to our counseling unit that has assisted thus far that new headcount with the increase from auto enrollment. Because those units got hit first with the call center, communications, and people come for counseling. And for the enrollment side, it's going to be a batch process through CPMS. So the big driver up front will be an enrollment for beneficiaries and the 403B TDA. Loans take a year to qualify for new members, and SCPs that can buy after a year, but doesn't qualify after 2 years.
I'm a little confused. You said, earlier, Sandy, you said that we're gonna need to have additional staff to handle the volume of new members coming in.
Yes,
What's the rate of new members per month?
it's going to be between 25 and 28,000 on October 1. All at once.
So in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I'm also hearing is we currently don't have sufficient staff to handle that volume.
No, so let's back up a little bit, right? When those folks are going to be enrolled on October 1st, it's going to be an automated batch process. So staff will not have to handle that manually. So we'll be able to cover that. What that does not take into account is members opting for beneficiaries or to join the TDA. Last year's budget, we added staff to member services, member communications to handle that. So we will be able to handle that initial onslaught on October 1st of beneficiaries and the TDA. What Sandy's communicating is certain transactions these new members will not be able to qualify for at least 1 year or 2 years. So you can't take a loan until you have 1 year of membership. And you can't have your prior service counted into 2 years of membership. So we'll be able to handle the initial rush of new members, but over time, as those transactions ramp up, we'll have to onboard new staff for that and get them in ahead of time, start training them to handle these transactions. Is that clear?
Let me confirm one thing. So what that says is that it is your expectation that this budget for this fiscal year upcoming is accurate to the best of your ability, and that the increase of headcount for the future work that you think is pushed out. In other words, you're not gonna, how much will you come back for within this fiscal year, or do you think this budget will cover that plus the vacancies? Is there a bridge for this fiscal year that we need to know about?
So as Sandy said, we could come back close to the end of this fiscal year, so we can hire more headcount to prepare them for October 1 of next year, when now loans are going to be ramped up significantly because you have 25,000 people now eligible to take loans, and the call center and counseling, that will all ramp up. So we may need to hire staff at the end of this fiscal year to begin training them to have them ready for that onslaught next fiscal year.
Why don't we do that?
I'm sorry, Greg.
Why don't we do that now?
Well,
Why don't we
we
put
will,
this?
we will come to you probably before the end of this annual year, before December, to give you an estimate of what we think we will need in 2025, 2026, 2027, right? And if we have that need in 2025, we'll want the headcount approval as soon as possible, because it could take us 18 months to hire 20 or 30 people. It could take us, actually could take us more than 24 months. So, we may ask for give us the headcount approval. We'll begin to spend on that headcount in fiscal 2025 as we ramp up employment, and it'll affect fiscal 2026, 27, 28. Consider it like I said, a 3 to 5 year ramp up process.
So it's going to take that employee 6 months to a year to really get to the point that they're able to be of value, of service. Why not begin now? So that it coincides with the time. Say again?
You don't really have a need now, right? You don't need that much ramp up time. I think if you could just get the vacancies even, if the vacancies are budgeted for, you can even start with the vacancies, that puts you ahead of the curve. I think it's around what hits the budget for this fiscal year versus what hits the budget for next fiscal year. And
I don't expect it to hit the budget for this fiscal year, but
so,
we may ask for additional funds. It's just, the reality is, if we want to add 30 or 40 headcount, that's a 24 to 36 month process. So we can't, if you gave us approval today,
you couldn't do it.
yeah.
Let me ask a question to that point. I think it's very important in that while you're trying to build staff, one of the solutions had been to bring in temps. Have you guys considered your temp costs and or the ability to bring in a company that supports the on-ramping as you backfill people? Because what you don't want to do is get caught with your pants down when something just kind of blows up and you just can't get enough people in the seats, to Greg's point, that are trained and ready to go.
Yeah, so this budget includes an increase to temps.
It does, okay.
Yes.
You have to understand too, that we can't give temps access to our operations systems, right? So temps can only be used on the periphery of this responsibility. So,
they represent.
Mentioned earlier, the biggest hit right away will be on enrollment and adding beneficiaries. Those temps be used there.
Yeah, it's temporary wave.
But also, a lot of our temps eventually become staff.
That's what I'm saying.
That's how I started, and
It's the ramp up.
many people here started like that.
But does this include any unanticipated expenses? For example, aren't we gonna be losing managers at some point, and is that gonna anticipate some additional costs, and is that built into this budget?
I'm not sure what you mean losing managers, like manager on staff at BERS?
No, I mean, people who actually do the recommendation and work on investment items, and the fact that I don't know that we still have an investment team.
Maybe change it.
Yep.
So
We
is
still have
that,
access to
is
those
that,
folks.
is that
And-
built in
No, but,
to this?
well,
I'm just saying, do we need to set aside?
professional answer, Greg, but
Yeah.
in the wash of the budget and the moving of headcount around responsibilities, we took a number of the people who worked on the investment strategy department and placed them in ops. They're currently doing operations business. We can very quickly restaff investment and scale it to demands very quickly.
You don't lose the headcount.
We're currently restructuring that operation right now. There's gonna be a job posting the next week or so for a new director in that space. And we could staff up that, we could reshift the people back to that response.
I would like, I don't know what the formal process to do this, but I would think that we need to do that.
They manage it.
Hold on 1 second, hold on 1 second. Craig was just saying.
Yeah, I just think, I don't know what the process is. I just think we need to do that right away. Because it
Fine.
feels to me like you have to bring like this investment. Maybe I'm wrong, and I admit that I'm, still a little naive in this area, but how are we gonna execute on investments if we don't have any people in place to do the execution?
Well, we do have
Beginning
people in place
October 1st.
if we need it, and we rely on our consultants.
I just want to remind everybody, you're gonna have an item on the agenda and several items. The controller is your investment advisor until you don't delegate him any longer, delegate the entity. So you do have access to an investment team, and to have a redundancy here is a different conversation. But my question is more about the temps. And are they a represented class, or do they have the ability to join a labor union at some point? I just want to understand, are they?
Not until they're full.
They do not.
They're not part of the civil service.
Please can you take this through? Like,
Manny.
Well, I just wanted to follow up on Greg's question regarding the investment team. It's such a vital department, even listed in the IPS. How was that dismantled?
Not completely dismantled. We restaffed operations. Two of the professionals basically support the needs in operations temporarily. Yep.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Because that's what we needed them.
it's a good question. My question is like a very simple question. What I'm sensing just on days of enrollment, I'm trying to paint a picture of what that day will look like and how many people you're gonna lose due to just not having a lot of staff there. Like, what is the flow? Do people have to rush to go to work? They're gonna be frustrated. It's gonna be crowded. They're gonna leave. They're not gonna come back. Like,
There's nothing for the member to do. They don't have to come to BERS. They don't have to come to the office. They don't have to call. It's automatic enrollment, meaning that if you're on payroll in a BERS covered title on October 1st, that payroll file will come to BERS and we will automatically enroll you in the pension. It is nothing for the member to do. It's handled on the back end here at BERS.
So it's opt-out.
okay, so why are members going to the place?
What they're saying is, after they've been automatically enrolled,
Okay,
you start to see the activity of them wanting to take out a loan or something like that a year out, because they have to be in it for at least a year. Then 2 years later, that's another
High service.
higher service.
okay,
That
that's
would,
the pipeline.
that would activate an interaction or transaction. But the opt-in, there is no real transaction that the person has to do. It's an auto enroll as of October 1st. You can call to opt out, but it's not the kind of thing we have to come in to opt in.
Okay, so there's no, let me just So there's no physical appearances on Court Street. No one's walking into any place trying to do anything this time.
No.
Okay.
My understanding is,
Got it.
let's be clear, on October first, I don't know if the timing of when they get their next paycheck is. They will see it in their paycheck. That's where the beneficiaries are most impacted. They're gonna see it in their paycheck for the first time, go, what happened to the amount that I normally get this paycheck? Then it becomes them contacting a customer service representative. That's the type of personality that will be necessary.
Right.
And that customer service representative will hopefully, this is where it's databased and hopefully scripted, that they would follow up with the script and indicate, so this is what has happened. We, because of the state law,
Right.
have enrolled you automatically into this system. Now,
That could be recording that you could make.
it could be, whatever they decided to, you're right, that could be AI.
I think from a service perspective though, that's important that they know where to call and who to call and they have an immediate answer. Cause imagine you get your paycheck and it's less than it's supposed to be.
Right.
Some of us don't notice it, not me, I
Right.
notice it.
Right.
And right away, who am I calling? And they're likely not gonna call birth, they're gonna call payroll. So we need to make sure that HR is well aware
Communicating with
and make sure that they have the resources to be able to provide the responses.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate question, and that they're not gonna send them back to BERS to say, well, blame it on BERS, call them.
That's okay.
So I think service, customer service is important.
I think also the education piece, like keep talking about following up with education and finance or whatever umbrella it's gonna fall under, but I think just understanding the importance of integrating this information and just having, I don't know, workshops or fairs or whatever you do in-house that will keep reinforcing the importance of this piece right here. And that's where my concerns are, because I know a hell of a lot of people just listening to parents and just taking their money out prematurely and using it to pay something where I'm like, so this is the conversation.
Outreach will continue. Yeah.
And question for Alex. In terms of if we were asking for update on the investment in our manager status, is that something that we need to be in executive session for?
I think you should be, just because, I don't know exactly what might arise during this conversation, so you wanna.
I'm just concerned that what I've heard from the last meeting is that at some point, we're gonna be in a situation where I know we have an RFP out, we have certain things that are happening. I just would like to know where we stand and what that implication is gonna be if we are without managers or have managers, or what that means and what it means of not having an investment team and who does the pay. I mean, those are all questions and we have a form now. I know at some point.
That's on the agenda.
It is on the agenda? So will we
The
go into
managers.
executive session for that? I didn't notice it, I'm sorry.
I think it depends on what it is you'd like to talk about. There's something on the agenda that's related to it, but it might not be what Greg wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's for the issue of that, so we don't stumble into an area, maybe that we get there, we should go into executive session.
So, for example, if there's a discussion about the status, it depends on what it is. We'll look at it when we get there.
I reserve the right to ad lib at will.
When we get there, we'll do it if appropriate.
Yeah. So at this time, I want to call for a vote and bring us back to the budget.
I'm sorry.
And so we'll go back to the budget, and then as those agenda items come up, we'll take your considerations, right? Fair enough?
Thank you, I'm sorry.
So on the budget, there any other questions on the budget? Seeing no other hands, we'll now take a vote. All those in favor of calendar item number 19, approval of the budget, please indicate if you're in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention, controls office.
Abstention, let the record reflect, abstention from New York City Controller's representative, from the New York City Controller's office. Next, the motion carries. The next Next item on the agenda is calendar item number 20, election of members of the audit committee. May I have a motion to consider? Second, Anthony D. Donald. As of July 1st, 2024, one of the previous elected primary members of the audit committee, Michelle Joseph, is no longer a BERS board member. The designated alternate, Naveed Hassan, is now the primary member. An alternate member must now be elected to the audit committee. Is there a volunteer to serve as an alternate on the audit committee?
I thought I was alternate.
Oh, you're an alternate to me.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
This person, for clarification purposes, this person will be an alternate to Naveed Hassan.
Is there any way I can stay the alternate? How did I get promoted?
We have to,
How did I get promoted?
we'd have to elect an alternate, and then you have to resign. No, the elected alternate, you resign, that person becomes a representative, and
I
then.
don't have any sick.
Marjorie, just take your primary.
Marjorie is volunteered to take the primary spot. Would you like to be the alternate?
Yes, I would love to remain the alternate. Thank you.
So
Thank you. I got roped into this in June somehow.
so if all those in favor, all those in favor of electing Instat as the primary member and Naveed Hassan stays as the alternate, all those in favor of that, please indicate. by-
I'm sorry, before you vote, so Marjorie is already an alternate to Alice.
So
We need
can you make
another-
it primary?
for Alice now.
Now I need,
They still need an alternate.
Yeah.
So right back where we started from.
not
You
necessarily.
just need one more alternate.
We need an alternate.
We still need another alternate.
All right, one thing at a time. Why don't we make her, let's vote on that
Yes,
first.
so we're gonna do the first things first.
And then you, the alternate, and then we'll start with the alternate vote. Just
Yeah.
gotta be in order.
So we have a volunteer for primary member, Marjorie.
She has to
All those
be
in favor?
Recommended or can she self?
I recommend.
Alice nominated.
I know.
Perfect.
Alice,
Perfect.
nominated.
All kind of nominations, girl, you got this.
All those in favor of?
I,
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Marjorie is the primary member. And now, and Naveed Hassan is the alternate.
To
Still
Marjorie.
Marjorie.
to Marjorie.
Alice needs an alternate.
Alice needs an alternate.
And
I'll
now,
just come all the time.
and now Alice needs an alternate. Any volunteers for alternate
Any nominations?
nomination?
Nominate Tony.
You go for the chair.
I know. I know.
I nominate Greg.
Oh, no.
Jessamine.
No.
Chibi.
Shirley.
I'm an alternate to Tony.
Oh.
Green, we only need you to pinch.
Aisha.
Show up.
Aisha.
Some water. Sandy.
Yes.
Alternate for Alice.
What?
Audit committee.
Audit committee. Why don't you have some plans?
I don't know who my issue is. I don't know where they're doing on the right.
Gonna get badges for you guys.
It's only one.
Yeah, that's a lot.
What about Manny?
Hey.
Manny.
Yo, it's nice.
Hey.
We haven't voted yet.
Yes, we haven't voted yet.
Oh, yeah, man.
They don't want to.
Exactly. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, competition.
All those in favor?
Hey.
Alright.
Double dot.
Anyone not in favor?
The extension.
Abstention?
See the kitchens.
Okay, that carries.
I think,
Okay, next,
Sandy's pretty more.
the next item on the agenda is a semi-annual update. May we have a motion to the internal audit, semi-annual update? Motion to consider.
Second.
Shirley made the motion, second by Karina Pollen. Dave, please present us with this update.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Are you able to see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so Good evening, everyone. My name is Ade, and welcome to the new members of the board. I am the Director of Internal Audit here at BERS. And today I will be presenting a high-level overview of internal audit activities so far this year as of June 30th, 2024. The first slide up here is our audit dashboard, and this just gives you an overview of internal audit activities, external audit activities, and provides an update on the remediation status of audit findings as of the end of June. So as far as internal audits, we currently have 7 audits in various statuses. The first is the 5-year out-dormant accounts audit, which was recently completed. And the enrollment audit, which was recently completed, both will be reported to the board at the next update. We have the debt benefits audit that's currently ongoing. In this audit, we're looking at debt benefits to determine if they were accurately calculated and distributed on a timely basis and in accordance with plan documents and applicable laws and regulations. We also have the SCP audit, which is SCP stands for Service Credit Purchase. We're currently in early field work in this project, and we're looking at SCP calculations for accuracy as well, timeliness, and compliance. We are in early planning for TDA rate and investment elections. TDA stands for Tax Deferred Annuity. It's a supplement plan to the pension that members are able to opt into for additional retirement savings. So we're going to be reviewing the processes by which members' elections are processed. And by elections, I mean their contribution rates and their investment elections between the fixed and the variable. We also have the information security audit, which is currently on schedule, and the pension payroll audit, which is currently on schedule. As far as external audits, we have the recently reported controllers audit that looked at the financial and operating practices as well as board governance. We actually just discussed this audit at the audit committee meeting that happened right before this one, but you will have a copy of the report in your packets. Our second external audit is by the Division of Financial Services, DFS. We are currently waiting on the report from that audit. It was an audit that they kicked off back in 2020. We received the preliminary report back in the fall of last year, and we are awaiting the final report. We also have the administrative review being conducted by Milliman. I previously reported on part 1 of that report, and we are waiting on part 2, which reviews the benefits processing at BERS. The EEPC audit is a more recent one that was kicked off a few months ago. It's by the Equal Employment Practices Commission. The audit is mostly residing within HR, where they're reviewing some HR processes with a focus on utilization. And then lastly is the annual fiscal year audit by Grant Thornton. This is an annual audit of BERS's financial statements, and the auditors will usually present their report to the entire board, usually around November of December of every year. As far as remediations, the chart on the right just gives a high-level view of remediation activities as of the end of June. The first set of bars are the high-risk audit findings. 51%, just a little above half of the findings that are rated high priority have been fully remediated, and just under half, or 49%, are under remediation or awaiting remediation. And then for the audit findings that are rated medium priority, a good chunk of those have been remediated, so 63%, and about 37% are still open. I'll pause here for any questions before moving on to the next slide.
Any questions?
None.
Thank you, Ade.
All right, so moving on, I'm just quickly going to go over two of the audits that were completed since the last presentation. The first one is the member self-service audit, or what we call MSS. So MSS is the member-facing interface of the Comprehensive Pension Management System that we fondly call CPMS. MSS allows members to access their membership account information and submit certain transactions. So with this audit, our objectives were to assess controls related to MSS user administration. And when we say user administration, we're talking about activities around account creation, user authentication, demographic changes, account validation, removal, and we also reviewed controls related to incident response and patching over the application. And lastly, we looked at transaction level validations and approval within the system. So during the course of the audit, we identified 8 issues, 2 of which were categorized as high priority. And I'll focus on these 2 in the interest of time. Additional details on these and all the findings were made available to the trustees via SharePoint and are usually discussed in detail at the audit committee meetings, which all trustees are welcome to attend. So if you're interested in attending any one of our audit committee meetings, we usually have them right before this board meeting. Please let us know, let myself or Karen know, and we'll make sure that you're invited to the meeting. So going back to the audit, the first finding had to do with inconsistent account suspension. So during our audit scope, there were 2 accounts that were suspended, on suspicion of fraudulent activity. So one of them was promptly suspended, no issues, but the second one wasn't suspended until about 7 months after the account was flagged. And this is attributable to the fact that there was no formal process in place or a defined time frame for suspension of accounts. So what we did here was recommend that BERS implement a formal process that will clearly define the time frame, the process, the steps, the documents that are required to be filed, and all the activities around when BERS gets notification of suspicion of fraud or fraudulent activity. And then we also recommended that the members are informed in writing when their account falls into this category, and also provided with instructions on how to validate and reestablish their accounts if they choose to do so. As far as management's response, they agreed to the findings and plan to distribute a procedure memo that will address how these sort of scenarios are handled. The initial target timeline for this was by the end of June, but the timeline has now been pushed back to December of this year due to other urgent issues that have taken priority. Finding number 2 had to do with the lack of incident response plan. So what we found here was that BERS does not maintain a formal incident response plan for the internal BERS environment and systems. And the absence of an IRP and lack of clearly defined responsibilities between BERS and the software vendor, Vitec in this case, could negatively impact BERS's ability to respond to incidents in a timely or effective manner. As part of the audit, we also looked at the COOP plan, the continuity of operations plan, and it does not contain response guidelines or detailed procedures to be followed if in the event of a disaster. So what we recommended was that BERS establish a formal IRP to cover BERS's internal environment and particularly activities related to MSS. We also recommended that the plan at a minimum outlines the roles and responsibilities, contact information, parties to be notified, and the procedures for reporting, tracking, and responding to incidents. We recommended, lastly, that the plan be reviewed at least annually for updates and accuracy, and also a review is needed to make sure that the resources needed to implement the plan are still in place. So management did agree and plans to update its IRP to cover activities related to MSS and the internal environment of BERS, and the target date for this is the end of this month, September 2024. I'll pause to see if there are any questions before I moved on to the next and last audit.
Are there any questions? Okay, I think we good.
Okay. So lastly, we have the participant account audit. This was reported out around the end of June. So when we say participant account adjustments, what we mean are manual transactions that are made to accounts of members to correct anomalies. And these anomalies will be transactions that fail to post or that post incorrectly. There are also times when manual adjustments are made for errors within accounts, or even for transactions that are not covered by a normal work process, such as manual refunds or manual loans. And those come up not too frequently, but every now and then. And just to give perspective, adjustments usually range from a few dollars to thousands of dollars. So it just depends on what the issue is and what needs to be done to correct it. And for this audit, we focused on adjustments. We focused on monetary adjustments because there are also times when adjustments are needed to service. So this audit focused on monetary adjustments. So for the audit, our objectives were to review adjustments that were processed for accuracy, and we also wanted to evaluate the controls that are in place for mitigating risk associated with manual adjustments. So in this audit, we identified 4 issues, 2 of which were categorized as high priority or high risk. And I'll focus on those 2 in this presentation. Again, we go over everything in detail at the audit committee meetings, and the full reports were provided to the board via SharePoint. Finding number 1 relates to segregation of duties. So we noted that the way that CPMS is currently set up, there pretty much is no room to segregate duties systematically. So it's set up in a way that one individual is able to single-handedly process an adjustment without any system controls or process steps requiring verification or review of the transaction. And this is largely due to the fact that the adjustment process is pretty much a workaround, right? So if things were, if it's not the normal process, let me just put it that way. So if things were running 100% accurately 100% of the time, there would be no need for adjustment. So the entire adjustment process is pretty much a workaround to correct anomalies. So due to the nature of how it was set up, there are no system controls. So one person, regardless of the size of the adjustment, it could be processed by one person. And this poses a risk. There's a risk of human error going unnoticed if there's no review. And there's also a fraud risk. So we raised this to management, and they informed us that they do perform occasional reviews, but that those reviews are not always documented. So what we recommended here was that a formal review process be established, and that process should require review and sign off from another individual that is separate and apart from the individual who is submitting the transaction. We also recommended that if this wasn't operationally possible, because we do realize that there could be some challenges there, that a subsequent review be performed on transactions that are processed. We also recommended that the review be documented. That way there's an audit trail and there's assurance that the review steps are being processed. And then lastly, we recommended that a threshold be set for managerial review, so that if a transaction is being submitted above that amount, a managerial or supervisor review will be required. So management did agree with the finding, and they introduced a manual review of all transactions over $5,000. There will also be reviews introduced for manual adjustments processed, and the timeline for this implementation has been moved to July of 2025. And some of that timeline is due to reliance on Vitech to implement the system controls that will be needed to segregate duties. And then the second finding had to do with some instances of data entry errors that we identified, along with instances of inadequate supporting documentation. So we did notice a couple of issues where I guess in the process of manual data entry, an additional 0 was added, and that kind of increased the amount that was intended to be processed. I should note that both instances that we noted have been corrected. They were identified by management. I believe one of them was corrected almost immediately and the other one was subsequently corrected. But the issue here more so is that members are able to view their account in MSS. So there's a risk of displaying inaccurate information to these members if they log in and view their account before it's corrected. And also if they contact BERS, there's also a chance that, staff could relay inaccurate information to them based on what they see in the system. So what we recommended here was that CPMS controls be implemented that will flag and prompt users to double check the amount that they are processing prior to submission. And also we recommended again that for high value transactions, a threshold should be set. So management did agree, and again, they set the threshold for $5,000, and a ticket has been submitted with Vitech that will provide a soft warning for amounts over the threshold prior to submission. Implementation for this soft warning is expected in January of 2025. If there are no questions, that will conclude my presentation today.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up about, we had audit right before this today. I'm the new chair of audit. I was happy to preside, and I think that I wanted to bring up two things. First of all, context of this is pretty remarkable. A day is set up to be the guard dog of basically the beneficiaries, looking and examining our executive staff, our team, and even us to some extent. And I think it's really transparent and really open the way that a day is given the opportunity to review us. And I think it's a credit to Sandy and to Daniel that this is so open and so transparent. The other thing that I want to mention that occurred today during our committee meeting was the board, the audit committee voted for the construction of a cover letter for the response to the controller's request for an audit. We know that there was some public chatter about our inability or our fiscal abilities to manage our fund. Their audit came back with very few critiques of our process. Most of the critiques were regarding something called Directive 6. We are the only pension board that are really bound by Directive 6 at this point, but that we, when there's stuff that's put out there publicly, we should have the ability to respond to it publicly. So we are formulating a letter to forward the letter back to the controller regarding the last audit. And
can I
no?
jump?
So, but you can respond after I'm done, for sure. So, I'm very pleased at the process and at how open our executive team is to getting these critiques, because some of them are very personal. Some of them are saying where they lapsed. And for us to be open about it is, I think, a testament to the organization, and is about moving forward. And when there are mistakes, owning the mistakes and fixing the mistakes. And one of the other things that we see, and a lot of what Dave spoke about today, is data control. Garbage in, garbage out. And we're getting data from a lot of different sources, and sometimes that data needs to be cleaned. So I think we have a good handle on cleaning new data as it comes in. Remember, this is a 110-year-old pension fund. Members that were onboarded 30 years ago, we might not have all the beneficiaries listed. We might not have all the data correct. So this is a process that I think any really old or mature pension fund is going to have at some point. But I'm very pleased with where we're going, and we will send a draft of the letter, the response letter, soon.
Thank you, Tony. Allison?
Yeah, hi, sorry. I just wanted to be clear. I don't have any role at all whatsoever in the Comptroller's Office Audit Bureau. That is a purely separate entity. It is my understanding, however, that as part of like the audit bureau, I just want to be clear, audits all 5 systems on a 4-year cycle. They are legally required. The audit bureau of the Comptroller's Office is legally required to audit every single city agency, including the pension fund systems, on a 4-year cycle. I believe that they're in process or have already audited some of the other systems based on wherever they are in the cycle. I also want to be clear that they had no role in, I know you mentioned, Tony, that the comptroller about 1.5 years or 2 years ago made a request to the State Department Department of Financial Services to audit. That's a completely separate and unrelated to the comptroller's 4-year annual audit requirement, which is done under generally accepted governing auditing standards. It's called GAGIS. And one thing that is a part of the GAGIS process that I know for a fact was included, that occurred here, was that before an audit is released, and mind you, the Comptroller's Office did no press or publicity around this audit, but before an audit is released, it is submitted to the staff of the agency being audited, and the staff responds to that audit, and their response is included in the final audit product. So I just want to be clear, the assertion that I heard was that this was released publicly with no chance to respond. And I do want to be clear that it is general practice, and it is my understanding that that was adhered to, because there would be some legal issues if it had not been adhered to, that the draft audit was submitted to the agency. The agency formulated a response and responded to that draft audit, and those responses were included in the final product that was submitted.
So can I just add one thing? There was a mention of Control's Office Directive 6. That's furnished to every agency. I believe that there are other pension funds that stick to it to the letter of the law. So the notion that this would be the only board or the only entity in the city that follows Directive 6 is quite frankly not accurate. So I just want to make sure that is technically clear, that is not a directive created for the Board of Ed retirement system. I mean,
Anecdotally, we've seen situations where our board members were at the same event, were bound to Directive 6, where and it might be for various reasons, might be they're wearing union hats versus pension hats.
Tony, we've discussed this at that, but this notion that Directive 6 doesn't cover, that a directive from the Controller's Office doesn't cover this agency or only covers this agency is kind of ridiculous.
It just seems like more trustees.
Those trustees are not employees or representatives of the city and attend events as representatives of their union, not their pension fund. That is my understanding of why it's different.
I can anecdotally tell you of events that where pension trustees were present and our trustees were bound to Directive 6 where others weren't. But
I am bound to Directive 6 wherever I go, on all 5 pension fund boards and as an employee of the city of New York.
You guys can take this up after the meeting. Can we move on, please? It's almost 6 o'clock. and we still have a whole list of agenda items to go through. I take a point of privilege in here. We've got to move on, guys. You guys can take this up after the meeting.
And the point was that we did well on the audit, is what the final point was.
So thank you, Dave, for your report. The next agenda item is calendar item number 22, authorization to the controller of the city of New York to invest, sell, and exchange the funds of the retirement system. May I have a motion to consider? Second. Motion by Kareem, second by Shirley. Salil, can you please tell us about this resolution?
Yeah, the resolution here is the quarterly authorization for the comptroller of the city of New York to invest, sell, and exchange funds of BERS and implement the decisions of the Board of Trustees. We recommend approval of this resolution, and it extends the authorization through December 31, 2024.
Allison, your hand is raised for this?
That may have been from before.
Or was that from?
It's prior. I think it was the comment.
Are there any questions for Salil?
Maybe you want to explain to the new members what this is?
So there is a request that for the.
Yeah, so every 2 months, this is a rolling authorization so that in accordance to the wishes of the Board of Trustees for the decisions that they make during that quarter, the comptroller is to have very specific investments, whether to invest, sell, to exchange specific funds, and there's some specific tolerances around the definitions of that are in the resolution. But it's just for essentially a 3-month period, and then we've been renewing this. We've been going at this quarterly rate for quite some time now, for years.
So to clarify, the controller is by law, the custodian of the pension boards. We delegate authority as investment manager to the controller, and each board does it, some on different intervals. We do it quarterly. I think teachers does it biannually. So just to be aware for the new members, that's what we're doing right now, affecting that delegation.
Okay.
Right?
What would be the implication if we fail to designate the controller?
Legal last meeting on that.
So
Just free to answer.
statutorily, the controller is the custodian of the system's funds. In practice, they are the ones holding the assets, right? They cut every check and practically have to undertake every investment. So realistically, there is not any other kind of realistic alternative with any kind of short-term practicality. So in practice, the controller could generally be presumed to have this continuing authority. Now, if the board were to affirmatively declare that it's not going to continue this authority, I think we're going on somewhat new ground here. I don't think I should really, I think that to go any deeper in this, I think we should go into executive session client. But let me just say that this is basically a formality. They are holding the money under the statute, and you need them to do this in order to execute on any investment in this project.
So we're making a decision that we really have no other decision that we could make.
Not in the short term.
Okay, so I just want to be clear that, we're doing this, but it really doesn't matter.
I guess I would say I'm not sure that's 100% accurate, because I do think, Alex, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know if Marta is still on, but I do think there are questions about whether the Bureau of Asset Management would be able to continue to identify new managers for the system. I think the status quo would maintain in terms of managing investment decisions that have already been made. But I imagine, not being a lawyer, that it would have material impact on the Bureau's ability to continue.
Client?
So I believe, Allison, there's a request to go into attorney-client to discuss this further, if I'm understanding correctly.
Okay, I didn't hear that, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can everybody who's not an attorney or a trustee leave the room, please? And can we pause the recording?
My thoughts.
We're back in public.
Thank you. You can let them in.
All right, so let me text.
Yeah, watch party.
Huh?
Watch party.
I watched it.
What's it, 9 o'clock, right?
Everybody.
Yeah, 8:30. I gotta be home again.
I got to
Oh, is it 8:30?
Well, my house here.
My daughter paid, you went home, right? Your party. I'm claiming.
What time does it be?
Yeah, me too.
I gotta be there at 7. Usher.
This organization that comes from school called.
Yeah.
Yes, but I like to watch
8:30.
Yeah, so he took a job at the school now, so he's working as a community coordinator, so he teaches the kids out in elementary school.
Working as what?
Community coordinator.
All right, so
Still does.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, he still does that.
Yeah.
Fabrics is like one big. Yeah.
Motion to call the question?
Oh, it is, yeah, I can see the numbers going up.
Can you have your attention, please? The meeting is back in session.
the meeting is back in session. We're back in public session. The calendar item that Brought us into attorney-client session is calendar item number 2, which was authorization for the control of the city of New York to invest, sell, and exchange the funds of the retirement system. We had a motion, ample discussion in attorney-client session. Are we ready to go to a vote?
Call question this.
Did she pause it?
No, it's fine. It's recorded.
It's good to say.
All right,
We're back
okay.
in public session. The board, are we ready to vote?
Yes, sir. Call the question.
All right. All those in favor of the authorization to the control of the city of New York to invest, sell, and exchange the funds of the retirement system, please indicate if you're in favor.
That's for the next 3 months, correct?
Yes.
Through December
Next 3
31st.
months, that's right, through December of 2024. Any opposed?
What was that?
Any abstentions?
Daniel Paul.
The motion passed. Next on the calendar, the next item is calendar item number 23, authorization to enter into agreement with Axia TA LLC to provide private markets investment consultant services to the Board of Retirement Systems. Do we have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Second.
Have a second. A motion made by Tony, second.
I motion the table.
Karina Collins made a motion to table. We have a second on table.
Second that one.
Second, Shirley, all those in favor of tabling this authorization, indicate if you're in favor.
Aye.
Can I ask a question? What happens if we table and we push this to the next meeting?
Do you want me to get? Do you want me to get this?
Salute?
Yeah, so basically our current contract with Axia expires in mid-November. And we have an RFP. I can't get into the details of the RFP, but it would begin, that's probably available, the new services, starting after around January. So what would the ramifications, whether you table it or whether you reject whatever's being proposed in the resolution, is that you would have the limited risk of, essentially skating without a private market consultant for that short period of time. For that section of the portfolio, you would not have a consultant.
When is our next executive or our next board meeting?
24 of, the executive committee is the 24th of September. The board of directors, I don't know when that's.
This is full board.
Yeah, we haven't set the October meeting yet.
So there was,
In October, prior to.
yes, there were several questions that were raised for greater understanding by the board about what the extension looks like, timing of a new RFP and new onboarding of the new consultants. And so a lot of those questions you were not here, were not resolved. And so that's why I'm asking for tabling, because we've not answered those questions. And so that's the reason why between now and the executive committee and the full board.
I understand. I
I
got kicked out of that executive session, but I can answer any of the questions concerning this extension if it helps. If not, you guys are welcome to read the material that was in the packet and pick this up at the next, which is perfectly fine. Pick it up at the next Board of Trustee meeting.
Call the question.
Yes.
Table.
The problem is that sometimes we have a challenge getting a quorum.
Right, I think maybe it's just.
And so I'm concerned that when we push this into the future and then we miss a quorum and then we run into the possibility that we're left without.
The contract doesn't end until the end of November.
No, the mid-November, so you only have 2 more executive committee meetings that would be in place prior to the end of the current contract. Board of Trustee meetings, I don't know how many because we don't know those dates.
I don't think the executive committee can extend the contract.
No, the contract's too big for extension.
Yeah, it's gotta come back to the
Table
regular
this
meeting.
until, and have further discussion with Axia and come back for the next meeting.
Yeah,
I think the motion on the table is already
To
tabled.
table.
We have a second. We were in the midst of voting. I think there was one question there, so I think we do have to bring it back to the motion that was on the table to table before we can do anything else in regards to this. So all those in favor of tabling this calendar
Aye.
item? Aye. Any
I abstain.
opposed?
Yeah.
Any abstentions?
Greg abstains.
Greg abstains. Let the record reflect that the motion passes to table. So the next item on the agenda is
10 minutes.
Borough Asset Management Responsible Property Management Standards. We have a motion to consider.
Motion. Second.
Motion Shirley, second Karina Pollen.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Allison, if you want to introduce Monique.
Can I make a suggestion, please? This has been already introduced at TRS. It's been held over at TRS.
So where's that happening over here?
I think that as representative of the chair, PEP chair on that board, I'm privy to that information. I personally have questions about how this came here. I'm not against the discussion points, but I have some questions about how this arrived here and how it came here. And I think we should probably table that and maybe can include that with the star.
Are you making a
We're
motion?
making a motion to table.
Do we have a second on that motion? We have a
Yeah,
second on the
second.
motion to table. Second, Manny Tavares. All those in favor of tabling this calendar item, please indicate if you're in favor. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Me.
Yeah, I'm opposed to tabling.
Opposed to tabling, abstention. Now.
You're opposing your.
I'm abstaining.
Yeah, I'm just opposing because it's been on the it's been on the agenda for several meetings. We think it's a policy that.
I like the discussion.
Which one is it?
I honestly, with the abstentions and the vote no, I don't even know if we have enough votes to table it. Oddly, you know.
Excuse me.
John, I voted no.
Okay, I'm sorry, who abstained?
Sean did.
Shirley.
Shirley.
Adriana.
I need to
We have
remember.
15.
We got 15, which is not enough. You need 15
It's not tabled.
to anything.
So what happened? The motion to table?
Well, the motion to table fails right now.
14, 15.
We can continue discussion.
Motion to table.
It needs, what does it need to table? One more vote?
15, yeah.
We need 15.
Can I change my vote?
Of course.
Yeah.
Then I will support the motion to table it. Just to move it forward.
Who also abstained, please?
Adriana and Shirley.
Thank you.
Let's try to discuss it and then go to vote.
I think that's not a good conversation. Discussion.
Actually, can have it at some point.
So I changed my
I'm so mixed. I mean, what's happening? Like, we out the house, like.
Alex, did the motion carry?
Favor. Well, I'm sorry, we want to see the evidence in favor. If we have one against and one abstention, then it carries.
We don't.
Yeah.
Again, 2 abstentions brings us to 14 in favor, which means that's not enough.
And we have one no. So, no table.
So.
If not one table, then you can have a discussion about the topic.
And then vote no if you're not interested. Go ahead.
All right, I have some concerns about how this was brought. The organization is right there. Well, Allison, why don't you introduce it?
Allison, are you on?
I'm here. What did you ask?
If you could introduce it. We don't have enough.
Sure.
folks.
Sure. So, I guess approximately 1.5 years ago, we embarked on a process to try to develop investment criteria for when we invest in private equity, private real estate, residential private real estate to do our best to ensure that the money from the 5 New York City pension funds are not being used to evict tenants or treat tenants in a way that we would not want tenants to be treated in general, and particularly with our money. And so we embarked on a process that has been for the last year and a half, led by an outside consultant, Monique King-Veland, who is here with us today, to develop investment policy standards that we are recommending we add to the BERS investment policy statement that set some criteria around those investments. And so that process has been led on the outside by Monique, and internally by our Chief ESG Officer, John Adler, and the Chief of Staff to the Bureau of Asset Management, Kate Visconti, who is also on this call. And so with that, I'll just hand it over to Monique to walk through what we're recommending and the presentation. And I don't know if this came up already. I had to step away. My daughter's not feeling well. So this was passed at NYCBERS in the spring, and is the discussion is continuing at TRS. So we're excited to bring this to you today.
Monique, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Kate, can you pull up the slides? So I guess I should say good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the trustees for inviting me to join you all, at least virtually, this evening, and for the opportunity to speak. We greatly appreciate it. Kate, can you go to the next slide? We are probably facing what I like to tell people is the most challenging set of housing market dynamics that I've seen in a very long time. I've been in the world of affordable housing, homelessness, and housing justice for a little over 2 decades. And I've frankly never seen a more complex set of converging circumstances. Think the high cost of housing and increases in homelessness, which are consistently ranked as top concerns in research in communities across the country, including New York, and insufficient supply, which has exacerbated affordable housing and homelessness challenges. Moreover, there's the rise of institutional scale investors in things like single family rentals that have elevated the concerns about protecting tenants from abusive practices that increases the rates of housing instability and displacement. The need to address those dynamics was really shaped the initial thinking behind this project and the work. And the goals of the project, as you see here, are to enhance the long-term sustainability of the residential rental housing market by really improving resident stability and well-being, and increasing the social impact of rental housing investments. And in addition to some of the context that Allison provided, I just want to mention that there's also a strong business case that is driving this work. The work really focuses on improving long-term investment risk and return, maintaining and producing better quality housing at lower cost, aligning with the emerging regulatory environment, and reducing reputational risk. Next slide, please, Kate. A key outcome for this work was developing a set of standards that were both impactful and practical. And to do that, outreach and engagement were critical. On the next slide, what you'll see is that we really focused on developing consensus among key industry stakeholders on a set of standard tenant protections and supports that could be adopted by diverse industry participants with a key, and that was a key outcome for the work. So we engaged in a pretty extensive stakeholder engagement and outreach process to build the necessary consensus and buy-in, but also tap into the feedback and insights to better position us to build an investment policy statement that we could present to you all that was both, again, practical and impactful. And this graphic just gives you a snapshot of the various groups that we engaged and continue to engage in this work. Next slide, please, Kate. A core component of the process was sharing of the initial principles, standard and best practices, and the disclosures with the asset managers for feedback. Again, because this goal was about threading that needle between practicality and impact, it was essential to hold space for the asset managers to provide insights and feedback that would help to further shape and refine the standards. We hope this approach would also build collective buy-in that would better position the standards for successful implementation. The initial groups we engaged were developed in consultation with the real estate team with a lens towards ensuring a diversity of perspectives. So think affordable versus blended portfolios, total assets under management, those who are vertically integrated versus those who are not, et cetera. As of today, you'll see the names on the list. We've met with 8 asset managers shown here in individual introductory sessions, and we hosted working group sessions for additional feedback and further refinement with a group of representatives from the different various firms. Next slide, please. These meetings with the asset managers were incredibly fruitful and informative. And following the meetings, we asked for and received additional feedback in a variety of different forms. So written feedback, we did follow-up meetings and dialogues, et cetera. This slide really just summarizes some of the key learnings from those sessions. By and large, there's been broad support and enthusiasm for the work and appreciation for the engagement. I also think it's important to note here that we also engaged with the Office of General Counsel on fiduciary duty, and that engagement resulted in further adjustments that are also reflected in what you received in your packet and what we're here talking about today. All in all, we've learned a lot, and we're confident that the insights and the feedback that we heard helped really shape stronger and more impactful standards that are better positioned for collective buy-in and implementation. Next slide, please. So briefly, the decision framework for the standards is designed to include specific property management policies and practices. The framework is really grounded in research and policy, and as I've noted previously, has been developed over the last 2 years now in consultation with a variety of different stakeholders, including the groups that I mentioned on the previous slides. At the top level here, there are overarching principles, and within each principle is a set of practices, standard practices, and in most cases, also best practices. Think of the standard practice as sort of common practice or norm, commonly used to produce a desired outcome, whereas a best practice is a method or approach that has been generally accepted and proven to produce a more optimal or desired outcome that has more optimal results. Weaved into the principles and practices are a set of public disclosures. The disclosures are intended to enable tenants to make more informed choices, and investors may also use them to compare opportunities, but this would be in addition to the normal due diligence process that might be looked at when you're doing a normal investment review. And finally, the standards, principles, practices, and disclosures are the underpinning of the investment policy statement and the IPS details reporting requirements. Next slide, please. So there are 7 principles, and you can see them here. Implement consistent and fair tenant screening and selection practices, offer clear and fair leases, and reduce undue burdens of security deposits, maintain safe, quality, accessible housing, foster positive tenant-landlord relations, honor tenants' rights to free speech and free association, optimize tenant stability, and minimize evictions and other negative exits. Again, underneath these principles are 26 standard practices and 22 best practices. Next slide, please. This slide just gives you an example of the interconnectivity between the principles and the standards. So just to give you a quick example, you'll see that, for instance, under principle 1, which is implementing consistent and fair tenant and selection practices, A standard practice here is disclosing all tenant financial obligations, including rent, utility costs, fees, etc., at the time of application. And a best practice would be offering draft lease terms and other communications in plain language and copies in multiple languages to non-English speaking tenants. I think I am at my second to last slide, hopefully. So again, we're asking on behalf of the Bureau of Asset Management for you all to consider the investment policy statement that includes the responsible property management standards. And I'm here to answer any questions, as are Allison, Kate, and others. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a long meeting. I greatly appreciate you allowing me to present. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm trying to understand, does this mean that, I see some of the companies there, this would limit their ability to take a tenant to court? In a tenant landlord dispute, non-payment or whatever issue, this would mean, are you recommending that the landlord would not be able to pursue an eviction? I want to know what the practical effect of this is.
No, I'm so sorry. I was just having trouble hearing you. Can you say the question again?
I'm
sorry.
I'm trying to understand what the practical effect of this is. Does this mean that those buildings or those landlords that you have referenced would be less likely to take a tenant to court in any kind of a non-payment or any kind of a dispute? Or is this really symbolic that, here's some principles we think you should follow, but it really doesn't have any practical effect? What is the practical effect?
There's a variety of different standards, but I think to use your example for the eviction example, it doesn't formally, for instance, the practice preclude anyone who is taking the investment and therefore bound by the IPS from doing any evictions. What it does allow, though, is for greater notice and also additional things that would happen in the course of the eviction. So you would have, so for example, actually, and I want to just pull up one of the standards to note, there's a standard that basically requires that you do a notice period that is earlier than what you would typically do in the eviction process to let someone know of a potential default. There's also a standard that asks for you and landlords to connect folks with additional resources that may help them if they need to relocate or if they need help or assistance with paying their tenants, as opposed to just going to the first option, which is just the eviction. So it buys the tenant time to cure, it buys the tenant time to make sure that the landlord is made whole, or it allows the tenant to have an ability to have a better, softer landing if they do, in effect, need to transition. So it is definitely not just symbolic, and across the multiple standards, it creates real protections, but it also at the same time mitigates real risk around ineffectual practices and inequality housing.
I have a question. How diverse, and we talk about housing for underserved communities, how diverse are our tenants, communities, and I don't know if it's called, not even low income housing, I'm sorry, it's 7 o'clock, my brain is mush.
Affordable.
Affordable housing, that's what I'm looking for, affordable housing. Where on the spectrum are these real estate investments that you're speaking of? Because I know, I guess it was Blackstone that was here, talked about their plan and it was like 98% white. So how diverse is this? Were we targeting the communities, affordable housing? How is that being, what is the affordable housing metric, that sort of thing?
So I would defer to Kate and or Allison in terms of your exact portfolio and breakdown. I don't know that offhand. I will say that the policy, though, would imply to investments that you approved under the IPS across the board. So it would not just be limited, for instance, to an affordable housing portfolio, which I think is some of the strength of this, right? It's trying to create principles and practices that would become standard norms across portfolios, whether or not you were investing in multifamily or single family rentals, whether or not you were investing in strictly affordable workforce housing or a market. This creates some standard protections across the portfolio and the metrics, which makes it in some ways much more impactful. And I'm sorry, Allison, I saw you came on camera.
Yeah, I did. No, that's right. And John Glusak can talk about is not here today, and we can get you the full breadth of the investments, but of the real estate investments. But we have residential real estate investments across the country and across the world. And the demographics, I assume the demographics of the tenants in those rental, whether it's single family rentals or multifamily rentals, represent the demographics of the communities in which those investments are made. So it has less to do with the demographics of the investment team of the specific asset manager, because it would impact all asset managers, and more to think about like who are the tenants in these buildings that could potentially be protected if asset managers adhere to these standards.
So
I
Allison.
spoke to,
Oh,
I'm
please,
sorry.
please, no, please.
Sorry, Monique.
Yes.
A few months ago, I think I posed that question at the BAM investment meeting or what have you. And the question is that, you know, again, as board members, and we're dealing with a lot of, you know, when we think about our members and the impact of housing and being some of the most low income earners, my question is, you know, again, how is it tailored? And I think you answered it, and I think Allison just answered it, but I'm thinking of it from the perspective of how is this impacting workers that are not making a lot? That's where, and so that's the line that I just want to make sure that it's actually impacting the people. I call them the people that are under the radar, that are not being seen. So when we're talking about low income earners, we're talking about more likely having low income housing and having and feeling housing insecure. So how does that tie back into being able to ensure, you know, members and membership and so on and so forth? What does that have to do with this here board?
Sure. So demographically across the United States, the majority of renters are people of color. And so this would impact and hopefully, if it works, protect people of color who are renters. I'm looking at a Pew Research study right now, and that says in the fourth quarter of 2021, so it's old, 74% of white adults owned a home, compared with 43% of Black Americans and 48% of Hispanic Americans.
But that's
so,
yeah, but Allison,
if you reverse that, right, that it impacts renters, and renters are disproportionately people of color.
Can I? That doesn't necessarily mean where the investments are being made. It's in communities of color. And I just want to bring back the discussion we had, I think it was BlackRock, that talked about the real estate deal that they took over. And when we asked the question about diversity, it was like less than 1%. I'm just going to put that on the table. So
I thought that was of their staff. I might have missed.
No, it was residents of the community that they had taken over. I remember it very vividly. And when, I think Greg raised it, and when she responded, it was something like 98.6%, less than 2% people of color. I'm just raising that to say, you know, while I think I agree with this and it's important for tenant rights, I think it begs the question, are we still leaving out the most marginalized communities and people who need this in making this decision, right? I think everybody should have it, but really it's about everybody and not being selective of the haves that continue to get more versus the have-nots that are not getting enough. That's really why I'm raising.
Totally agree with that, Monique. You can add to this, I think, but the goal here is that these standards are adopted over time by the entire industry. And I don't know, Monique, if you were able to talk about this at all in the presentation, but since NYCBERS adopted the standard in March, there has been an inordinate amount of interest across institutional investors like other pension funds, as well as real estate managers across the spectrum in adopting these standards. So I don't know, Monique, if you want to talk a little bit about the work you've done there.
Yeah, so part of the,
Hold on.
part of the, oh, I'm sorry.
We move the,
So,
Let her answer first, Greg.
Yeah.
I don't mean to her. Go ahead, Monique. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so part of this next phase of the work has really been about having these conversations to get these standards to be something that become larger industry standards. And so we've had conversations now with several different pension funds. We've talked to the folks at CalPERS. We had a meeting with CalSTRS. We've talked to LaSera. We've also been talking to individual asset managers who are looking to do proactive work around adopting their own type of standards. And we've continued now to start doing presentations at a variety of different conferences and other places to try to get people to think about how they could adopt these standards from their own particular vantage points. And to your larger point, one of the powers I think of this is that even though it applies to the BERS investments, these managers are operating in places around the country. And what we know right now, based on recent data from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, is there is no state in this entire country where someone earning the minimum wage in their state can actually afford a 2-bedroom apartment. In New York City, that wage would need to be at $40 an hour, and that person needs to work 113 weeks a year in order to make what is required to actually afford a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City. So the idea of not having some level of protections means that affordability continues to be a crisis that's raging, not just in New York, but in places around the country. And this is one attempt, one additional tool in the toolbox that allows us to address that crisis.
So we have to be really careful, Monique, because this can be a really slippery slope if we don't have the pipeline in place that will allow this this opportunity to impact the people who are the most vulnerable. So I'm not really in the mood for okie doke from anybody, because this is a very sensitive issue right now with the most vulnerable populations. People don't understand that people are leaving work and grown ass people 40, 50 years old, and they're going home and sleeping on their mama's couches.
Absolutely.
Like we're not going to, if this is not about finding a solution or impact investing. I heard you say that this was something that was going to happen within the community in which it serves. This is something that will be tailored to other people who, for the members or what have you. This can get ugly really, really fast, because this is one of the pain points that members are dealing with right now, trying to get to work every day, and a big population of the working homeless. So we're not gonna play games, I hope, in this area. And as a community advocate, it's zero time for play when it comes time to this. And this has to be very structured, very particularly, in order for it to sound good. It can't be vague. Allison, I hear you trying to, cultivate and frame it, but it sounds way too vague coming out of your mouth when it comes time to the people that are lower income earners and really have to hustle. We can't even afford to play equality at this level when it comes time to people in housing, because there have been people who have been in crisis for a very, very long time here. So we have to be very, very careful. Monique, this sounds like a great idea, but I hope that this does not get out of hand and it winds up being something else, because that would be destructive. It would be horrible.
I seen Tony saying, and then I think we should go
to a vote.
Tony?
I just hate being opposed to something that I'm fundamentally support. I support the notion. I'm a card carrying liberal. I think we should protect people. I'm concerned about how this entered. I noticed that it was the name of the firm, which I support the firm too. I support for the long term, right? That's the name of the consulting firm that you work with?
No, actually, I'm an independent consultant.
Okay.
I'm actually engaged by
What's
the
your
law firm that is an
Go ahead, Monique.
Sorry, Monique.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got thrown off. But what I was saying is I'm an independent consultant. So I was actually working through and engaged by for the long term to lead this work. So my firm, which is Azande LLC, has been leading the work independently but I was engaged through a grant for the long term.
And I can explain how For the Long Term entered the picture, if that would be helpful too, Tony.
I'm just concerned within the context of us already being in litigation on the, in New York State Supreme Court on some of the ESG issues now. That this doubles down on this, that we were, and Monique, you give a great presentation. I fundamentally support what you're doing, but this was brought originally to us by For the Long Term.
That
which is
it's not, I would like to clarify that, Tony, if I can have a moment. So first of all, the litigation in State Supreme Court was dismissed. The Wong litigation was dismissed. So that was a big win on behalf of all of the pension systems.
When did that happen?
That said, the genesis of this project was in early 2022 when the controller first was elected. One of the first investment opportunities that came before the boards after the controller came to office was a private real estate investment through the manager Cerberus, who many of you might have heard of. Cerberus had been in the news a lot in the prior year over really terrible tenant practices at within their portfolios of single family rentals. We expressed some concern about that. Cerberus said, oh, don't worry, we'll just sleeve the New York City retirement systems off and other people want to be in the SFR's world, so we'll just put your money elsewhere. And we said, instead of that, why don't we actually create some standards that we can apply to all of our investors? Because we're not going to materially change the sector and make it better, hopefully, if all we do is just say, we're not investing in that, but this market is growing and growing across the country. There have been lots of news reports about that, about North Carolina, Georgia, how communities that were once strong middle-class homeowner communities, as homes go on sale, investors are buying them up and turning them into single-family rental communities. And so we began within the controller's office a process of trying to figure out how we could go about that. We realized very quickly we don't have the internal expertise to develop and put forward a proposed investment policy recommendation in this area. And so we actually spoke to COIB and we were like, we want to raise outside, and we didn't have staff dollars to do it. And we wanted to raise outside dollars and to see if there was some way we could find a consultant to work on this project. After speaking with COIB, the controller's office can't raise money for itself. The Ford Foundation funded this work under Darren Walker and Roy Swan of the impact investing portfolio there. And the Ford had a pre-existing relationship with For the Long Term as a C3 entity and suggested to us that we partner with For the Long Term so that For the Long Term could be sort of the fiscal agent for this project. And I'm going to go off camera now.
Well, I think that I'm sorry, Monique, but to just be transparent, it just feels like you being a puppet right now. Like I'm getting tired. I'm getting sleepy. And I'm just saying that this is a lot of time. If there is no real agency coming from you, and I don't even want to act like that this is like a really good idea right now. I'm a parent and I'm dealing with a community who really, really has a crisis right now. And I heard you speak before and you did an immaculate idea, but I don't think this is a great idea from BAM because right now I just see a black face with some non-processed, non-developed idea that they gave you the task to deliver it. Like that's the thing that we've been complaining about for all this time. You know, it doesn't feel good. And it's actually almost insulting.
I think we should vote. I think we should vote on it.
So I'm calendar item number 24, which is the responsible project management standards. All those in favor of passing this, please indicate by the sound of aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Trying to adopt it. I just wanted to clarify.
Abstentions, please just raise your hands so Alex. Abstentions, any abstentions?
Six, seven
We have all.
abstentions.
Alex. The final item is calendar item number 25, star report for the meeting.
So I'm happy to table that, to make a motion to table that.
Okay, so motion to table by John Dorta, second Karina Polly. All those in favor of tabling this? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries to table this. That concludes the agenda for this meeting. Our next meeting will be determined at a later time. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second.
Who's the first?
All those in favor of adjourning immediately, please indicate in favor. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Have a great evening.